If you or your company sells B2B, this show is your go-to resource to help you sell smarter using LinkedIn. So my name is Chris Rudolph, and I'll be your host today. And during each show, we interview LinkedIn experts around key topics to really help you move your sales needle, fill your sales pipeline, and so that you don't have to worry about where your next customer is going to come from. So today our guest is Brynne Tillman, and she is a highly sought after LinkedIn speaker and author, as well as the director of LinkedIn strategy at RevGrow. She has been recognized as a LinkedIn #1 influencer, has been featured in Forbes and Salesforce.com, and was named top 5 webinars of 2018 by Top Sales World. So Brynne is also an advisor to LinkedIn. So they reach out to her for her insights on new features and launches. So welcome to the show, Brynne.
Thanks, Chris. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to discuss how to get more referrals and do better warm prospecting on LinkedIn. Before we dive into our topic today, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and how you got into the business of being involved with LinkedIn.
It was actually an accident. Back in 2005, I was very active with helping a bank and their new financial services division grow. And because it was the big crash, right? And so nobody was moving money, we sat around and said, so what can we do to figure out how to grow business? And we actually recognized that a lot of people were moving jobs and being laid off, and there were 401ks to roll over. So we started a program that was called the Employee Advocacy Program, where we're training people how to get jobs. And I came across this LinkedIn thing, and that's what I called it for a good 6 months.
I love it.
But we realized very quickly, as we were teaching this to help people find jobs, that it really was a sales tool as well. So, really soon on, even before LinkedIn realized the sales tool that it had, the brilliance of it, I was teaching it in chambers of commerce and almost as a loss leader for our sales training company. And then realized in just a couple of years that this was really all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything else. So I moved and morphed from being a sales trainer to really teaching LinkedIn for social selling.
Oh, that is so interesting. I'm always amazed at people's backgrounds with these social media platforms, because I don't think many people go to school to learn these things. A lot of times, I know when I was in school, LinkedIn didn't even exist. But that's interesting to hear, from a problem that a company has, the creative solutions that you can come up with.
Yeah, so it's really fun, and I love it.
Tell us a little bit more about, how to get better referrals, or how to get referrals using LinkedIn. And then we can dive into also kind of that warm networking piece.
Yeah, well, they kind of go hand in hand, but, and referrals is an interesting phrase, and a lot of people define that very differently. There's definitely a social media marketing component, there is a lead generation component, and there's a social selling component. And all three overlap some, but are not exactly the same. And when I think of social media marketing, I think about content generation and content sharing and thought leadership and putting yourself out there, the authority in your industry. When I think about lead generation, it's really first about positioning yourself as that thought leader. And then reaching out and engaging with people on LinkedIn and connecting with them directly, sharing insights and value, and converting those new connections once they've seen the real value that you can bring to them to phone calls. Then there's warm market introductions, and that's about leveraging LinkedIn to identify who in your network is already connected to your targeted buyer, and leveraging those relationships to get warm introductions or permission to name drop. And it's very different, I shouldn't say very different, but it's certainly different than the lead generation piece, both bringing great success to prospecting, but with a little bit of a different philosophy and approach.
Let's maybe back up here. Why are referrals such a key part of business?
When I started in sales, really referrals were a huge part of business development. So not much has changed. Just the way we go about getting referrals has changed. When I started in sales, we didn't even have a fax machine, let alone internet. I think at one point we got internal email, and I was like blown away.
Yeah.
But the way that we got business was twofold. One, because there was no internet, and if people wanted information from, I worked at Dun & Bradstreet, if they wanted information about what we sold, they had to call us. We had to have a conversation. And the other way that we would get business is from asking our happy clients for referrals. And typically the conversation was, Mr. Klein, I'm so glad we were able to help you and bring such value to you with our services. Who else in your network do you know that could use our products and services the same way you have? And they mostly went blank. They mostly thought, I love you guys. You've done a great job. I can't think of anyone right now, but if anyone should ask, I'd always refer you. And we did get referrals that way. But when LinkedIn came along, it changed the entire landscape. Because now we could filter and search our connections prior to meeting with them, identify 8 or 10 buyers that they know that we want to meet. And the conversation, instead of saying, who do you know? It's more like, Mr. Klein, I happen to notice that you're connected to 8 people on LinkedIn that I'm trying to get in front of. Can I run these names by you? And 8 may become 2 or 3 introductions. And if there are too many and introductions don't feel comfortable, just simply say to your client, thanks for reviewing these names with me. I'm wondering if I reach out to them directly, can I mention that we had this conversation and that you thought it made sense for me to talk with them? And now when we reach out, it's not cold. It's almost like an introduction. We're name dropping with, just got off the phone with Chris. Your name came up in conversation. I'd love to connect and loop you in on what we chatted about. You're getting about 95% acceptance rate on that. And then when they reply, we're just about like, I'd love to jump on a call, tell you a little bit about how we're working with Chris, and kind of talk to you a little bit about what we chatted about when your name came up. Here's a link to my calendar. Let's set up a time. And all of a sudden, we're leveraging this warm market to gain access to targeted people on a consistent basis. And it's a complete game changer when it comes to sales.
Wow, that is powerful. Just to see the shift from pre-LinkedIn to what is available now. What are some of the most common mistakes that people make when they're looking to get introductions or referrals?
So that's a great question. The first one is they don't have a good conversation with the person, or they don't have a good relationship with the person that they're asking, right? So this is really about building off of building relationships, but building off of relationships as well. So you can actually search a specific person's connections, like we talked about with the client, or even a networking partner, but we can also search LinkedIn based on our buyer persona filters and who our shared connection is. So LinkedIn will say, here are 700 names, and under each name, you see everyone you're connected to for each of those buyers, and we can reach out directly to them. So when people understand that, they get really excited and they start sending out messages, asking for introductions without any kind of background or why you want to meet with them. And when you rush into it that way without them understanding, even remembering who you are, you could really burn some relationships. So we certainly offer lots of templates on how to get introductions. But for me, the most success is when I identify someone and I email them, or I'm not necessarily using LinkedIn for all that outreach. One of my biggest clients that I landed, I noticed that one of the PTA moms at my kid's school was connected to a buyer I was trying to get in front of. So I hopped on Facebook and messaged her, because that's my relationship. So making it a cold outreach to someone that you don't have a relationship with and asking a favor too soon is a big mistake. The other is not offering it up on the other side. So if I do reach out, I'll always say to someone, and please feel free to look through my connections. If I'm connected to anyone you'd like to meet, I'd love to help you out as well. So if you don't do that, it feels very one-sided.
Yeah, keeping that reciprocity the goodwill with kind of the win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just it's building the trust factor as well. So it really does pay off. The other mistake is they get connected to someone and then that they just got introduced to and they immediately pitch. That's not good. So what we teach, in our courses and in our e-learning course, really about providing insights and value very early on and get them curious, learning something, and ultimately raising their hand saying, I really do want to talk to you. I have some questions. You've raised some, that I wasn't thinking about. And you can do that with content very early on. You always keep yourself open if you have any questions, even in a welcome message when you connect with someone, you can always say, P.S. if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat. But it's very low pressure, right? You don't want your first response to be, hey, this is how we help our clients. And, and they're like, I don't even know this person yet. Even if it came in from a warm introduction, you want to make sure that you are keeping relationship capital intact with the person that made that introduction too.
That makes me think of, salespeople or business owners. I commonly have a hard time asking for referrals or asking for warm introductions. A lot of times they know that that's a powerful tool and they need to do it, but sometimes they can have some fear or kind of anxiety on how to do that. Any tips, either whether it's a mindset or an approach standpoint?
That's a really great question, and really doing it helps you overcome it. But I often recommend start with someone you're really close to, someone that if it gets messed up, it's not a big deal. Well, first of all, you've got to have a process and a template and make sure you're following that process. It's really important. But try it with someone. Maybe it's a networking partner that has referred before or that you've referred. And meet them for coffee instead of jumping right into a client. Do with this networking partner. Each of you mine each other's connections, come with a list, review them, whittle it down to a few, and make some warm introductions for one another. And let them know, hey, I haven't done this yet. I heard this great idea. Do you want to play this game with me? Let's try it. Let's see how it works. And if you start that way and then you start to see some successes, you're like, wow, this is the easiest prospecting I've ever had to do.
Yeah, great tips there. What are some of the best success stories, whether it's you personally or people that you've worked with, as they got started on this approach? Any of them come to mind?
So, I have one for myself, but I'll tell a client one first. So we were hired by a benefits company right a couple of years ago when there was this big shift in benefits. Everything became pretty much equal. The whole fee structure shifted. And so everyone in that space were hammering for more clients because just even keeping their own clients cut their commissions significantly. So this company brought us in and they needed 5 new clients, and that was their goal. And they had tried phone calls and reaching out, but they were human resources. They sold right into pharma. And so all the human resources people were being hit with 7 to 10 calls a day. So there was nothing they could possibly do to stand out from the crowd, except get warm introductions. So the first thing they did is they went to their existing clients and we helped them mine their connections. And because this pharma human resource group was so close, they all knew each other. And I'm in the Philadelphia area. If you're in Philadelphia or Boston, it's like you throw a rock and you hit a pharmaceutical company. Like that's, all the big ones are between the two. So they all knew each other. It was like this tight-knit community. And they were shocked at how many decision makers at prospects their existing happy clients knew. Pretty quickly, they were getting introductions through their clients or name dropping. We did a lot of name dropping with permission, by the way. Don't ever name drop without permission.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah. And they were getting appointments because they were coming in referred by people that they trusted. And at a very high level of credibility. And they, by the end of the year, they made they exceeded their goals. So it was really cool because, you know, they're coming in, that referral, they were brought in with credibility immediately. One pharmaceutical company say, we've been using them for years. They're amazing, right? So they don't have to do the vetting around it. So I'd actually probably reduce their sales cycle as well.
Have you ever seen sales teams work together in this process to kind of amplify, you know, these warm introductions and referrals?
So that's a great question. I have worked with some clients where we've actually partnered sales teams with non-selling staff members to mine their connections and get warm introductions. Because if, let's say, someone in IT that works at the company connected to 4 or 5 of the decision makers that your salesperson is trying to get in front of, that's a really great introduction. Like, this is my company. I'm participating in helping it grow. So they did it on a volunteer basis, and I think there was like it was gamified, and they won contests and Starbucks cards and things like that, which was kind of fun. But ultimately, they were able to identify that there were a lot of people inside of the organization that knew decision makers in prospects that the salespeople were trying to get to. So it wasn't necessarily partnering sales with sales, but sales with other staff members. Sales and marketing, yeah, it was. And sales and marketing can do a lot together too. So we've done a lot of partnerships there. The only client that I can remember clearly, doesn't mean it's the only one, but the one I can remember clearly where sales partnered up was when they had an inside sales team and a field sales team. And the inside sales team, they were booking appointments for the outside, but the outside wasn't really getting involved. And what ended up happening is the outside sales team would hand over a huge list of all the people that they were connected to that they weren't able to gain access to or didn't have time to nurture, brought that list in, gave it to the inside sales team, who then reached out on behalf of the outside salesperson to schedule calls. And they already knew their name. They were already connected. So that was really successful. It wasn't cold calling, but it was nurturing a list of people that the outside sales rep really didn't have time to nurture. And so the insides, they paired up to do that. So that was pretty successful.
That's really good. That's really out of the box. I love, like, you know, there's so many opportunities that, you know, are readily available that we don't even think of, or even
low hanging fruit that often doesn't get eaten.
Yeah. No, that's good. So you've talked a lot about how do you, you know, ask trusted people in your network for referrals and warm introductions. But you also talked about it's not about just receiving those, but giving them. Any tips on how to be that you know, that good referral source for other people or warm introductions?
Well, so if you're a networker and you're out there networking, when you run across someone that's in the same industry, but not a competitor, or they sell to the same buyer, but not a competitor. So for example, if you're selling into human resources and your benefits, I'm going to use the same example because we did this too, you want to meet with the payroll people. There's no crossover but they're selling into the same buyer. Seek those people out typically. And if you've ever had anyone refer any business to you, seek them out and say, you know, you referred me some business last year. I'd love to get together, kind of go through my connections, love to pay it forward, you know, pay it back to you and make some introductions. And then it'll continue to grow for the two of you. So that's the big one, is finding the right people and then offering up, because when it comes back to you, it's the right people too, but you also have more value to give when you're already working with their buyer. So they get some immediate, you know, success, even if it's just phone calls with the right people, but they're like the right people. And that's because you're spending your political capital to make those introductions. So be careful too. So I have another little tip on how to find those people. You want to make sure the ones that you are leveraging have come with a referral or a recommendation, because you are spending your political capital and you want to make sure that they're worthy, right? So how do you do this? Go to all your existing clients, identify the role or the vendor that you'd want to meet, and go to your existing clients and say, you know, one of my missions this year is to meet the other vendors that my clients love, so that in the future, if any of my my other clients need someone, I have got a really good list of people to refer. Do you love your payroll guy or gal? Do you, is that, oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, would you be open to making an introduction? Sure, absolutely. That's an easy one, right? So now you meet that payroll person that becomes a good referral partner, but you can feel comfortable referring them because they came in from a client who loves them. You share a client. So if you'd refer and introduce them, you're like, Chris and I share this client and my client absolutely loves him. You really should have a conversation. You feel really good about that. Now, if your client says, ugh, I can't stand my payroll. Oh, I do have a couple of people that my other clients love that I'd love to make some introductions.
Oh, I love that. That's good.
So it becomes this really great circle where you're all making introductions on a continuous basis.
How about, that brings up a good point too, is, on LinkedIn, a lot of times you're accepting connections from people you haven't met yet or you don't know that well. If that's the case, any guidance on giving out referrals to, people that you don't know that well?
So if you don't know them that well, there are times I look at their profile, they seem legit. We've got a lot of shared connections. We're in the same area. I'll make the introduction, but I will say, hi, Chris. Mark noticed we were both connected on LinkedIn and asked that I make this introduction. I know Mark from networking and he's a really nice guy. I'm not sure if you're in the market for X, Y, and Z, but either way, it's worth taking his call. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I've taken the referral out of it and just said, Mark noticed that we were connected. Right. And so all of a sudden, if you accept this phone call, it wasn't like I recommended him or his services. Although he's still coming in with a little more credibility than a cold call, it's not the full credibility of he's amazing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, what else might our viewers and listeners might not even be thinking about as possibilities with like warm introductions or referrals that maybe you haven't touched on yet?
Well, we touched on a lot. The one thing I would say is you've got to make sure that your profile is positioning you as the authority and the subject matter expert. Because if it isn't, when you make these introductions, the first thing they're going to do is look at your LinkedIn profile. And if you are not represented the right way, all of those introductions, you're just going to get a percentage of them. Typically, when you've got an introduction, you're getting a very high acceptance rate, even a high, I'll take your phone call rate. But if your profile, first of all, if it's all resume, they're going to say, you know what, we're covered, we're okay, we don't need to talk. But if it's resource, where you're providing value, so they take a look and go, ooh, they get curious, you've offered something they didn't think about, they're more likely to want to take that call. And so it increases your conversion ratio from introduction to phone call.
That's good. So how important that profile is on
Foundation.
a lot of different fronts.
I mean, think about it from a website, right? Like if, let's say someone says, hey, go check out this website, and it's boring and dull, we know it won't convert. Well, this is your professional, personal website, right? Like this is it. So you want to make sure that you are engaging and you're relevant and you're of value to your reader.
Yeah. Well, Brynne, this has just been super. I know I've learned a lot of great tips and things that I haven't even thought about before. And I imagine our viewers and listeners have as well. Where can we go if we would like more help from you?
If you really want to learn more, you can go to revgrowacademy.com because that's where we've got a lot of our content. But for me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Brynne Tillman currently. And that's a great, let me know that you saw this, and we'd love, love to connect with you. I can send some resources for you as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brynne. This has been terrific. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you're watching or listening at home, or you're at the gym or on your commute, thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you soon. Have an amazing day. And remember, don't sell harder, sell smarter.